All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Willowbee Harrison. I use they, them pronouns, and I've spent the last 10 months as a public ally at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater. I've always believed that any kind of service work, especially terms of service, are more about a change in the service term participants than a change in the communities they work with. My service term with Public Allies has ignited many personal changes within myself that I believe to be newly developed assets I can teach others. I have gained powerful tools that have allowed me to be a whole person in the workplace and to advocate for myself in a professional way. Sorry, hold on. Okay. When I joined Public Allies, I had never been out as a non-binary person in the workplace before. I was a little nervous about how my identity would be perceived and if it would be respected, but since pronouns were asked every step of the way, being selected as a public ally, I pushed my anxieties aside. Chorus staff and members of my cohort have always been supportive of my pronouns and identity. I believe having this kind of working relationship is rare. I've heard way more horror stories from trans people about their experiences in the workplace than positive ones. But Public Allies offered me the opportunity to experience what being respected I'm so sorry. This is like so ridiculous. You're fine. You're fine. I know I'm just so frustrated. You're fine.
Will, would you like us to put our chairs in a circle? You have done a wonderful job sharing your thoughts and opinions during group conversations. Like, do you want to sit with us and tell us your POL?
Yeah, that might be better.
Can we make that happen?
Thank you.
How many?
No, I'm okay, but thank you.
got it. You're doing
you.
great. You are doing great.
Thanks.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, yeah. Thanks. Oh my gosh.
All right, there we go.
Oh, I'm good. Thank you, though. Thanks.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
I think you're doing great.
Thank you.
You're going to finesse it.
I'm like very frustrated with myself. Okay, thanks. Okay. Thank you all. Okay, so, okay. Public Allies offered me the opportunity to experience what being respected as a non-binary person in the workplace is like. By giving me a training environment full of supportive cohort members and giving me the skills I needed to learn how to advocate for myself, I was able to transform into a timid, closed-off coworker into an honest person who was able to speak up when my identity wasn't being respected. Being able to be my whole self at home with my friends and at work accelerated my process of coming into myself. I recently changed my name, and honestly, some of the people who have supported me the most have been my cohort members. I don't think I would have begun this process as quickly as I did if it wasn't for Public Allies, and for that, I'm truly grateful. Learning how to advocate for myself has been an extremely long process, and I still recognize that I have a lot of growing to do. I found that I have a much easier time advocating for myself in my personal life compared to a professional work setting. When I began at KST, I still had a lot of anxiety about being this professional person. My pronouns were asked on my first day. Oh my gosh. But it was not a conversation all staff members were privy to. People in the office quickly began to misgender me, and I wasn't sure how to go about having a pronoun and identity conversation when I was still trying to adapt to a nonprofit work setting. I wasn't sure how to have this conversation, especially with my supervisor and other people in the organization who held more power than me. Instead of advocating for myself, I adopted this mindset that I could separate my personal identity from my workplace identity. I was worried about creating tension or making other people uncomfortable because I was afraid the conversation would be too emotional or personal. Our society defines professionalism as a sterile environment where emotions, politics, and any controversial topic should not be discussed. We are force-fed these narratives that tell us to separate our personal selves from our professional selves. Internalizing these beliefs made me reluctant to correct staff members on my pronouns because I didn't know how to have these conversations without it getting too personal. I'm someone who has never felt comfortable with professionalism because I often feel I have to leave parts of myself at the door when I enter academic spaces, office spaces, networking events, and more. Having invisible identities is sometimes a privilege. The fact that I can hide parts of myself to avoid discomfort, violence, or any sort of negative reaction. But this has forced me to recognize how my internal identities don't always match the identities people assign me. Although at times I can use this as a way to protect myself, I believe it to be emotionally detrimental because at times it has made me feel invisible. I have found that I do my best work when I can be myself, when I am able to be a whole person with all of my complex identities and experiences. That is when I'm at my strongest. I believe that to be true for most people. But at the same time, I have been to countless workshops with nonprofit professionals who talk about the need to separate themselves from the work that they do. This systematic way of operating might work for some people, and that's great. But when I found that it didn't work for me, I began realizing how important it was for me to make the personal professional. I believe that KST offered the perfect environment and culture for me to learn how to find my voice and experiment with blending my personal and professional selves. Working for a small nonprofit eventually feels more like being a member of a family than being in an office space. As I warmed up to certain coworkers, I soon realized that the staff members who are vulnerable and authentic with one another seemed to work better together. As I began to open up and share more of myself, I noticed a change in my confidence, which allowed me to trust other staff members and ultimately work better alongside them. Those were the first staff members who used my pronouns and who eventually pushed me to lead a training on pronouns and trans inclusivity in the workplace. Leading this training allowed me to discuss extremely personal aspects of my identity in a professional setting. I was able to share my pronouns with staff in a way that was comfortable and authentic. After the training, I felt I had gained a deeper level of respect from most KSD staff members. Once I felt as though I could be myself in the office, that I didn't have to leave an identity that is so important to me at the door, I was able to be more present and active. I believe it is necessary to begin redefining what it means to be professional. Professionalism in itself is a product of colonization, which means that forcing ourselves to comply with professionalism is in a lot of ways reinforcing white supremacist, cis-sexist, heteronormative, and classist standards. Allowing people to be their full selves in their work environments where they are respected and supported is truly the most just and equitable way for us to work together. As we fight to dismantle systems of oppression for our own collective liberation, we must start with ourselves by finding our voices. If we cannot advocate for ourselves, who else will? Thanks.